is up, fight fans? This is DenverSportsBetting.com's UFC preview show, sponsored by the MMA Plug. DenverSportsBetting.com, your one-stop shop for all Colorado sports. Check them out for your coverage of all your local Colorado sports teams and wagering advice and betting previews. They are DenverSportsBetting.com. I am Ron Kruck, the voice of the Legacy Fighting Alliance on UFC Fight Pass, joined as always by local MMA guru Jordan Kurtz. Jordan, good to see you, my man.
Great to see you, Ron. Great to have you back in Colorado.
Yeah, excited to be home. I thought you were still running through the streets in your Nuggets jersey, celebrating the Nugs' historic comeback to eliminate the Clippers. But I see you did your rounds and you're back.
I did settle down, but you know what? The best part of all of it, aside from the action on the court, was the internet. The internet is undefeated, Ron. The memes against the Clippers were just pure gold.
100%. Props to the Nugs and our condolences to all you LA people that wanted the LA versus LA Western Conference Finals. Too bad. And speaking of comebacks, the UFC is, Jordan, on an incredible run of events since they returned from the COVID-19 postponements. The promotion returned May 9th, and after a month and a half hiatus, they have since produced 26 events, including those Tuesday night contender series. Jordan, I mean, while 2020 has basically been a low blow for most people, this year has been a dream for MMA fans.
Absolutely. You know, you couldn't ask for something better on the national and international level, if you will. I do feel for, a lot of the fighters that are on the come up, that are still on the rise through the amateur and the early pros, just because, if they haven't reached the level like with you guys with LFA or some of these other regional sort of shows that are like CFFC has a show. Jordan Titoni fights for that tonight from Factory X. Chepe Mariscal from Team Elevation, he fights tomorrow night for them. So if you're not a guy who's at that, I feel for you because you haven't had an opportunity in a while. But on the national level, in terms of overall macro level growth for the sport, I feel like it's exponential at this point.
Yeah, it's been a huge year for the UFC, for the LFA, my organization. And you're right. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of those regional MMA groups to get back into it. Hopefully, we're ramping up, and 2021 will be a different story. But the machine rolls on, Jordan, this weekend.
Yes, sir.
UFC Fight Night goes down Saturday, September 19th at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. Main card on ESPN Plus at 6 p.m. Prelims, 3 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Man, what a main event. Number 2. Colby Covington and number 5 Tyron Woodley. Top 5 matchup in the welterweight division, Jordan, between two men who have basically been verbally assaulting each other for quite some time. Covington and Woodley will settle their differences finally. Covington needs a win to remain in the thick of the chase in the welterweight division, while Woodley, let's be honest here, desperately needs a W after losing 2 straight, and he's looking to prove he still has plenty of fight left in him. The UFC main event preview is sponsored by Awning Company of America, one of the largest manufacturers of custom commercial and residential awnings in the United States, and a local Colorado company since 1970. Check them out at awningofamerica.com. Current odds of this recording: Denver Sports Betting has Colby Covington as a big-time favorite, Jordan, coming in at minus 360. The comeback on Tyron Woodley plus 275. Jordan, huge matchup with future title implications on the line. Break it down for us.
Well, one thing that has to be said for this, Ron, is for the former champion in Tyron Woodley, in the last 10 rounds that he has fought, he's lost all 10 rounds in a pretty decisive fashion. So the unfortunate thing as it relates to that for Tyron is this is almost a do or die moment for someone who is at the real twilight of his career, if you will. He's in his late 30s. He has a lot of mileage on the body. He's had to undergo some significant surgeries at times throughout his career. to repair some of what his best weapons are. You know, he's had hand and wrist issues, which, as we all know, what got him to the dance, or what got him that championship belt, was that big right hand.
You bet.
This is almost turned into, in the court of public opinion, a good versus evil matchup, by the way that Colby has gone on and played the heel role, especially within the climate of our country today, and with the way that the political aspect is. No need to get into that side, but we all know the character that Colby has decided to portray.
Absolutely.
Colby can fight.
And that's
Colby
the beauty of our sport, Jordan, is these two get to settle their differences mano a mano inside the UFC octagon. It's an interesting matchup, as you mentioned. I mean, 32-year-old Covington, coming off that unsuccessful title bid against current welterweight king Kamaru Usman. Great back and forth fight. He finally lost that by way of fifth round TKO stoppage, albeit some people thought it was a little early. He's ready to pick up where he left off. I mean, this guy, relentless pace, high pressure fighter who throws punches and bunches. Uses that swarming wrestling base to basically suffocate his opponents. There's a reason they call this guy Chaos, but he is as good of a striking wrestler as you'll see in the sport. Now, flip side, exactly what you said, Jordan. 38 years old, Tyron Woodley, does the former champ have enough left to make one more run at UFC Gold? This fight will really predict which career path Tyron goes down. A win, and he's right back in the welterweight title mix. A defeat, and that dream of one more title run, it could be over at this point. It's really uncharted territory for Woodley, who before now has never suffered back-to-back losses, and a third straight deficit would just be devastating. His strengths, of course, you mentioned that big right hand, very well-rounded, 6 career wins by knockout, 6 by way of submission, but that wrestling base is as good as it gets too. The 2-time All-American from the University of Missouri. For me, the X factor here, I think, is a big key for Woodley. He brought in Covington's former training partner at American Top Team, Jorge Masvidal, to help him during this camp in St. Louis. Covington and Masvidal spent countless time in the cage together, prepping back in the day, but not shockingly, Colby has downplayed that point. We will see. It's time for our picks, which is sponsored by 3 AM Water. Hydration for the go-getters. Check them out at 3amwater.com. Well, Jordan, as we mentioned, Covington comes in as the big favorite, minus 360. Woodley is the underdog at plus 275. Who do you like in this fight?
Ron, my heart says that you take Woodley by a knockout, but betting with your heart typically doesn't do too well for your wallet.
Well
so
said.
Being that, let's take a look at it for what it is. The pace is going to be what's the difference for this fight, in my opinion. Colby's cardio is some of the best in the entire sport of MMA. I think that he will be relentless with his pace and be in Tyron's face the entire time. My money says that Colby is going to pull it off.
Yeah, that pace is relentless. There's no doubt about it. As we look at the matchup, it seems like these two have been jawing at each other for years, and finally this rivalry will come to an end following this fight. I think a big factor, too, as these guys are trying to get back in the title mix, is not only as important as who wins this, but by the method that they do. A convincing finish by either of these guys would go a long way with the big boss Dana White on why they should get the next title shot. Now, the winner is not guaranteed that to be next in line. Of course, champion Usman and Gilbert Burns will face off soon. And there are a lot of other factors preventing that guaranteed title shot for the winner. Are fans ready if Covington wins for that rematch with Usman so soon? What about some of the other guys in the division? Leon Edwards, Nick Diaz, if he's back. What happens if Usman loses to Gilbert Burns? So there are many questions, But one definite answer, Jordan, the loser between Covington and Woodley, they have a long road back to Titletown. So as you said, as much as I in my heart love Woodley, I think outside of the cage, he is a professional and as real as anyone. I did a feature on him back in the Inside MMA days where we went back to his hometown, Ferguson, Missouri, after the riots there, and we toured it. It's something that I will never forget. Tyron is just a incredible individual and great person. But I think that undefeated jerk, Father Time, may have caught up to him at this point. He just hasn't seemed like the same fighter of old, especially not being able to be as successful as he's been with his takedowns in recent fights. And just as you pointed out, I think the real key factor is the cardio coming into this, and that's not good against a relentless attack of Covington. I'm going to go with Covington. I think he bounces back after his title fight defeat to get the wins. And again, the current odds coming in from DenverSportsBetting.com has Colby Covington, the big favorite, at -360, and Tyron Woodley at +275. Well, thanks for being a part of DenverSportsBetting.com's UFC preview show, sponsored by the MMA Plug. For the latest features, articles, and betting previews, check out DenverSportsBetting.com. They are offering right now a dinner with Broncos Ring of Famer and all-time leading receiver Rod Smith. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Get to DenverSportsBetting.com right now to enter the contest. Ron Kruck, the voice of the Legacy Fighting Alliance on UFC Fight Pass, and Colorado MMA journalist Jordan Kurtz with you. Jordan, I'm a little disappointed Denver Sports Betting isn't offering MMA fans a dinner with us. I mean, I find that kind of unbelievable.
I'm a real draw. What can I say? And you're no slouch yourself there, Ron. You're a legend.
100%. I mean, yes, we might have to pay the fans to come with us, and probably odds are we pick up the check, but still, man, it would be a night to remember.
We'll be washing dishes in the back. They'll be asking us to roll up our sleeves.
Well, Jordan and I are previewing the big Woodley versus Covington UFC Fight Night card going down on September 19th, and it's on to the co-main event. Thank you, UFC matchmakers Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard, for setting up what I think is just going to be an insane co-main event when Cowboy Cerrone rides into the octagon for his 52nd professional fight to take on the always extremely entertaining and finishing machine Nico Price. Jordan, these two just love to fight, and I mean, they would probably beat each other up for a buttered Pop-Tart at this point, but then again, who wouldn't? Current odds as of this recording, the Cowboy, he's the underdog, coming in at +130. Price, the favorite, at -159. Current odds, of course, coming into you from DenverSportsBetting.com. The UFC co-main event preview is sponsored by 3AM Water. Check them out at 3amwater.com. Hydration for the go-getters. All right, Jordan, this one's going to be a lot of fun. Give us your take on the co-main event.
Ron, on paper, I love this matchup, but I also have this little voice in my head that says, I hate this matchup too, because as much as I love Cowboy, I can't help but think it's too soon just based on the frequency of events. You separate the recent history, and I absolutely love what this matchup is. This is a fan favorite matchup between two guys who are just going to go out there. They're going to let everything leave it in the cage and just go for it. But because Cowboy has taken so much damage over the course of his last 4 losses, which 3 of those 4 were in pretty devastating fashion. You could make the argument in the fight with Pettis that, that he could have won. It was a very close fight that could have gone either way. But if we're talking the Conor fight, the Tony fight, the Justin Gaethje fight, he took so much punishment in those fights that I would hate to see Cowboy then become the guy that Daniel Cormier always alluded to not wanting to be, where you just over and over at the end of their career, you see your favorites. I'm of the Cowboy generation. I grew up watching Cowboy on TV all the time. He is right within my era of just the boom of the sport. So seeing him just, from what he once was to what just at times it turns out to be, I've always said you get two guys. You have Donald and you have Cowboy. When Cowboy shows up, it's going to be a yeehaw, one hell of a night. But if Donald shows up, it's not going to be so good.
Yep.
So, I think that Nico Price has the age working in his favor this time, that he's the younger fighter. Right. He is so explosive, and the fact that he can find finishes from so many different places that the fight can take place, I think it's going to be a very tough night for Cowboy, unfortunately.
I love the analogy you just had. Cowboy shows up or Donald shows up. Donald was, of course, the guy who showed up against Conor McGregor. Cowboy is the one that's been kicking ass for years. But there's no easy way to say this, but the 37-year-old gunslinger has been shooting blanks recently, losing 4 straight, albeit in Cowboy's defense. I mean, those losses were to some of the top fighters in the sport. Tony Ferguson, of course, Justin Gaethje, as you mentioned, Anthony Pettis, and as I mentioned, some guy who makes whiskey named Conor McGregor. I think he still fights. I don't know. But Cowboy, he's been, fan favorite, one of the most active fighters in the UFC. He will tie the veteran Jim Miller for the most fights in UFC history when he makes that walk to the octagon Saturday night. But the question there, do you bring up the dreaded R word? Will this be his final fight before he rides off into the sunset? 4 losses in a row is extremely concerning. 3 coming by way of those devastating stoppages is a big-time red flag. Flip side, look at Price. I mean, this guy, just like Cowboy, I don't think has ever been in a boring fight, plain and simple. 11 UFC bouts, all 11 ended inside the distance. So much like Cowboy, people will tune in to watch Price fight anytime because they know they're going to get a show. Where he struggled is establishing himself as one of the better fights in the welterweight division. Consistency has really been inconsistent when you go back to him. It's win, lose for him. But as you look at this matchup on paper and you look at his fights over time, this would be the biggest name to put on his win resume if he can take out Cowboy. At this point, maybe the biggest win of his career is either James Vick or against Brandon Thatch. So he's got that big time power. 10 of his 14 victories coming by way of knockout. Very strong hands. My X factor was what you mentioned too, Jordan. Price, 7 years younger. He has not taken the damage that Cowboy has absorbed over his long 51 fight career. So it's time to put our money where our mouths are and make the pick. Today's co-main event pick sponsored by K2 Lending, your local lending resource in Summit County and the Vail Valley. Check them out at k2lending.com, your home mortgage partner. Jordan, it's all yours, buddy.
I mean, as much as I love Cowboy and have been a forever day one guy for Cowboy, I have to go with Nico Price. I just think that if he is even somewhat of the intensity level that he was coming out for the Luque fight, for the Luque 2 fight, I should say, the second fight,
right?
When where he had the eye, the crazy memes from that,
yeah.
He was loving it, incredible, just lucid through the whole thing. But if he's any bit of that form, I think it's going to be a tough night for Cowboy because Cowboy does not possess anywhere near the power that Vicente Luque has. And Price was, Nico was walking through everything all the way up to that point when the doctor stopped the fight.
Yeah.
So I put your money on Nico.
Yeah. If you want to see a great idea of what this fight could be like, go to Nico Price's Instagram account. he created his own poster that he thought the UFC should be using. And it was him and Donald, like after one of their wars. So they're all beat up, their eyes are black. And that's what I'm expecting from this. Both these guys are absolute warriors. They always put on a show, leave everything in the octagon. But Price is younger, stronger, and should get the win. And that's exactly why I'm going with Cowboy. Yep, gonna take the underdog. Just when you think things couldn't get any worse, he comes back and totally redeems himself. We've seen it before. I want to see Cowboy's grandma and his new baby enter into the octagon once again. Listen, I don't love the pick, all right? Full disclosure, but I'm going to go with the legend, Cowboy Cerrone. If you were listening to our main event preview, you heard Jordan Kurtz say, betting with your heart is not a good thing, and he's right. But every time you think Cowboy is done, he suddenly can pull off an upset. And he usually does those in events and in bouts against guys where it's not the big name. The pressure isn't there. He's not fighting Conor McGregor. He's not in a title fight. So I'm going to go with the underdog, Donald Cerrone. I don't like it as a bet. It's more of a watch fight that I guarantee will produce fireworks. I'd prefer Jordan to maybe take a flyer on a prop bet that this fight doesn't go the distance.
I think that that's the safest possible bet that you could make with this fight. If you're not wanting to go the heartbreaking route and placing money against Cowboy, especially if you're a Colorado MMA fan who's followed him forever.
Great point. Of course, Donald Cerrone growing up here in Colorado before moving down to his ranch in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Current odds as of this recording coming in, of course, from denversportsbetting.com, your one-stop shop for all Colorado sports. Cerrone is the underdog at plus 130, and the favorite is Price at minus 159. But the real winners for this fight will be you, the MMA fans. This is denversportsbetting.com's UFC preview show powered by the MMA Plug. For the latest features, articles, and betting previews, check out denversportsbetting.com. Ron Kruck and Jordan Kurtz with you previewing the UFC Fight Night Covington versus Woodley card going down from the Apex in Las Vegas and airing on ESPN+. Jordan, time in the show to check out a fight or fighter on the card that you and I are keeping an eye on. Some really solid and fun matchups on this card. I know you were going back and forth between some action, but who are you turning your spotlight on this week?
I'm going to put my spotlight on Mackenzie Dern. I think that she has a very favorable matchup against Randa Marcos. I think that we've only seen really and truly one stub of the toe in terms of her actual fights. Weight cutting is a whole different issue, but in terms of her actual fights, we've only seen her stub her toe once, and that was her very first fight postpartum. Since then, she's came back and she looked flawless in her last performance. I love the odds right now on taking the submission finish for Mackenzie Dern. If we know anything about Mackenzie, she is a submission hunter, and she will absolutely look for that finish in any sort of grappling exchange possible. That is arguably some of Randa, or if you look at Randa's history or Randa's record, right, she doesn't have a whole lot of finishes that aren't outside of submissions, and particularly arm bars. If you get into a grappling exchange with Mackenzie Dern, the former world champion jiu-jitsu player, you're going to have a tough night. And Randa Marcos, she's another one, like we mentioned with some of these other fighters. Ever since she's made her way to the UFC via the Ultimate Fighter, she's traded wins and losses throughout her career. Mackenzie Dern is a title threat, I feel like, down the way. If she can continue to improve with her stand-up, her ground game and her grappling is so solid. I mean, her lineage within the jiu-jitsu world is huge, with her father, with him being, one of the most prolific figures throughout his generation of jiu-jitsu. She has all these things working in her favor. She has the look, she has the charm, she has the ability to go in there and scrap, and she is a finisher. I love Mackenzie Dern in this matchup, And to be honest, I think that the odds makers are a little bit off on this right now. They are giving a little bit too much love, in my opinion, to Randa Marcos for those sports books out there that are offering those finish lines. As of this morning, when I placed my action, it was only a plus 120 situation for the submission for Mackenzie Dern. I jumped all over that. I am definitely hoping that she gets that, because I can 100%, by the time that fight night comes, or by the time that they're locked in, that line is going to move.
I agree with you 100%. I love that bet at plus 120 or minus 120, right?
It was plus 120 for the submission.
Wow.
Yeah, she was the favorite as far as the money line, but I believe that for BetMGM, the official UFC partner, she was marked this morning as a minus 190 favorite. So even still at that is still a very, very good line that you could still make a good return on.
Right.
You know, obviously not the best in the world, but
I like the bet.
It's a great bet.
Solid bet. And according to denversportsbetting.com, their current odds on the money line has Dern at minus 190, just as you said. The comeback on Marcos is plus 150. But if you can get that submission bet in, I love it. You know, for me, Jordan, as the play-by-play man for the Legacy Fighting Alliance, I like to spotlight the LFA alumni who are killing it in the UFC. This was a difficult choice this week because there are 12 former LFA athletes fighting on this card. It's insane, proving once again that the LFA is the true feeder league into the UFC. I could have turned the spotlight on who you chose, Mackenzie Dern, who also, you know, got her start in the LFA, Kevin Holland, Andre Ewell, Jordan Espinoza, just a few to mention. RFA champion Gerald Mearshart, he's on this card. Former LFA champ Sarah Alpar. But the fighter that I want to keep an eye on, because he's just been on fire, for me is Ryan Superman Spann. He is facing the always tough Brazilian Johnny Walker. The current odds coming in, according to denversportsbetting.com, Ryan Spann is the underdog at plus 110. Johnny Walker, some money coming on him recently. He went from a minus 120 to minus 137. My pick, sponsored by 3 a.m. Water, hydration for the go-getters. Make sure you check them out at 3amwater.com, a great company. Spann, the Texas product, has reeled off 8 straight wins. His turnaround has been nothing short of unreal. After losing in 15 seconds on his first fight in the Contender Series, Spann came back to the LFA, where he proceeded to destroy his next 3 opponents and capture the LFA light heavyweight strap. Those wins would catapult him back into the UFC, where he has now won 5 straight. Now, this is not an easy task. Walker, you know, it wasn't that long ago that the 28-year-old Brazilian had 3 straight first-round stoppage wins, displaying his brutal power. You know, he was even at that time, Jordan, kind of being considered as a legitimate threat to John Jones' reign. However, the hype train was derailed quickly after he was stopped by Corey Anderson and then Keita Krylov next. So there's no secret here. Walker needs a win in the worst way. The X factor for me coming into this fight is the fact that Spann is training at a gym in Texas that is experiencing massive success right now. That's Fortis MMA under head coach Saif Saud. They have played a key role in Spann's turnaround. He's a different fighter than he was 3 years ago when I was calling his fights in the beginning of his LFA career. He was cocky. He was raw. He has now become a well-rounded mixed martial artist. So I love the odds as Spann as an underdog. I'm going to go with him to continue that impressive run. And a win here for him could get him into the top 10 and really move him into the top echelon of the light heavyweight division. I think he really has the opportunity to dominate this fight from the opening bell, although he's got to watch that one-punch knockout ability of Walker, which we have seen him display before. But I'm going with Spann in this one, Jordan.
I like that pick as well. I think that one way or the other, a very safe pick to potentially hedge your money with on this fight is to pick take that line on this not going the distance, because there's going to be bombs thrown in this matchup, plain and simple. One question that I do have in terms of Superman Spann is the cardio aspect. If this fight does draw into those later rounds, how and depending on how volume heavy those initial exchanges are, how will he hold up throughout those later rounds? Because that was a little bit of a question earlier this year in one of those wins where, hey, he started off hot, started off great. I believe it was the Sam Alvey fight. Started off great, and then he really on. Kind of exactly. So can he hold on? If he can, and if he can find the button, I think that he can knock him out. I think Johnny Walker has shown that, when he can't find his mark. And let's make this be known too, Ron. We didn't touch this point. Johnny Walker was his own worst enemy. He was at once the anointed one. He was the chosen one to be the potential successor to the throne. But if we all remember, it was him doing the worm in celebratory fashion after one of those first round finishes where he blew his entire shoulder. If you look at I believe it's his right shoulder, he has a massive train track scar that runs the entire length of his deltoid. So he did some very significant structural damage to one of his best weapons.
Crazy.
So he was his own worst enemy in that regard. Do we know that his shoulder is even the same? Knowing some of those stories and anecdotes from other fighters who have had similar surgeries, some of them get it back, and some of them, the shoulder is just always a little bit looser than it once was. They don't have the ability to pull the trigger and just have that fast twitch, boom, and fire the way that they once did. Maybe now that it's been a little bit more time recovered, he spent some time up with Firas Zahabi up in Montreal. We'll see if all of that translates into Johnny Walker finding his way back. I don't like the chances of it. I like Superman Spann.
Yeah, and always throw in the factor of mentally, where is his head? He's dealing with 2 losses in a row, going from, as you said, the chosen one down to back just to being the guy fighting for to get in the mix. So should be an interesting matchup in the light heavyweight division for sure. The closing odds as of this recording, Walker's still the favorite at -137, Spann the underdog at +110. Jordan, going to be a great night of fights. Enjoy the UFC, my man.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you. That's going to wrap up another edition of Denver Sports Betting MMA Preview Show, sponsored by the MMA Plug. Make sure that you check us out on denversportsbetting.com for more UFC previews, and follow us on social media. On Twitter, we are at @Kruck, at Peanut Podcast, and at Betting Denver. Instagram at Denver Sports Betting, and comments from the Peanut Gallery. I am at Ron Kruck on Instagram. For my partner, Jordan Kurtz, I'm Ron Kruck, and that is all.